This picture, May 2nd, 2023, is when I took this picture. Just a reminder, 2 years ago, that was this church. And it was an amazing summer of 2023. We started probably in January or February, drilling a well, putting in our holding tank, laying the electric lines, running the water lines. Then the builders show up, all the material showed up. It sat on this property for almost 2 weeks. God had a hedge of protection around this because we had 2x4s and 2x6s and it was right after COVID, and those things were in high demand. And we didn't have a gate. We didn't have security cameras. I can mention all that in hindsight now, but God protected this property, and God was here during the building of this church. And again, just a short little reminder of what it looked like in May 2nd. That's the closest I could come to today's date. So there it is. Amazing. Is that showing up full screen up there? Oh yeah, good. All right. One of the things I have to complain to my wife about is my sports jackets are shrinking. Anybody else have that problem? Does this work? Oh, it doesn't work. Okay. Today's message is really not meant to put down, the medium-sized churches, the large churches, the mega churches, but rather really I'm just here to highlight the role of the small church, which is what we are. How do you define a church? A, B, C, or D? Obviously, D. Right? A community living in union with Jesus Christ and each other. Problem is, as churches grow, A, B, and C start to become more part of the church. It's all about the building, and it's all about the building maintenance, and it's all about who's going to do that, and then it's all about events. We got a big building, we got to have events, we got to do things, we got to keep it occupied. And then along with all that comes the organization and the organizational charts, the pastor and the elders and the deacons and then this person and that person, and it gets more complicated and people get offended. And so far we're avoiding that kind of stuff. We're small. And, one thing I want to reminded of before I get going here, I do appreciate the pastor and his courage for allowing others to speak from the pulpit at times. You go to a lot of churches and it's almost like the pastors are chained to the pulpit. Don't you dare speak from the pulpit. But I do appreciate our pastor. So, and if God has placed you here, take a deep breath, become involved or not. Another good thing about this church, you want to come every Sunday, sit somewhere, soak in his presence, shake a few hands and leave, you're more than welcome. You're more than welcome. But if you want to come and you want to be involved, you're more than welcome. Uh-oh. I just skipped a slide. How do I go back? Nope. Oh, you're giving it all away now. Okay. Small churches don't have to go big to be successful. Many times it's not God's plan at all. Size is never an indication of health. First and foremost, God loves small. 80% of the churches on the planet have less than 100 people. That may not apply to the United States specifically, but for the planet, 80% of the churches have less than 100 people. You see examples of how God loves small in the Bible. Little flakes of manna, a small flaky thing. As I read briefly from Exodus 16:13 through 15. So in the evening the quail came up and covered the camp, and in the morning a layer of dew was surrounding the camp. When the layer of dew evaporated on the surface of the wilderness, there lay a small flaky thing, as fine as the frost on the ground. When the children of Israel saw it, they said to one another, "What is it?" For they did not know what it was. And Moses said to them, "This is the bread that the Lord has given you to eat." I actually had to look it up. I couldn't believe that there was a reference like that to a small, flaky thing. But like I said, God loves small. What about Gideon's army? If you've attended this church for any length of time, you've heard many references to being like Gideon's army. 30,000, that was too many. God says, "No, I don't want you going to battle with 30,000 because then they'll take credit for it. So let's pare it down. Tell everybody who's anxious and afraid to go home." Well, guess what? 20,000 people went home. And you're left with 10,000. And God's like, that's still too many. Even though they're going against a huge army, 10,000 was too many for God. So God said, take them down to the water. And everybody that bends over and laps the water like a dog, we're going to send them home. Only the ones that kneel down and grab a cup of water and drink, we're going to keep them because they're the ones that watch. While everybody else is getting their water, these are the guys that are watching. And I feel that this church has a lot of people like that in it. We kneel and we lap. Because when you bend over and you start drinking like a dog, you're not seeing what's in front of you, you're not seeing what's left of you, you're not seeing what's right of you. But if you're someone who's on guard and aware, you kneel down, you grab a little water, and you take some. So Gideon got his army or his manpower from 10,000 down to 300 by just God telling him to have the people do that. And like I said, I think this church has a lot of lappers in it. And of course, you know the story of David and Goliath. I'm not going to read the entirety of that. One thing I will do, have any of you had a chance to see on Prime the House of David? 8 episodes, first series. Great. If you haven't had a chance to see that, I'm not plugging a commercial or anything here, but it's just 8 episodes, and it ends up with the David and Goliath part that you'll all wait for. But what an example of small versus big and what God can do with small. What about the few loaves and fishes? First time, 5,000. 5 loaves and 2 fishes. Second time, 4,000. 7 loaves and a few little fish. And the one lost sheep. Matthew 18:10 through 14. I'll just read 14. So it is not the will of your Father who is in heaven that one of these little ones should perish. Nice little reference to that. Second reason or example of how small churches can be a blessing. Relationships. And I didn't underline relationships. And I do, by the way, I do want to apologize for the fact that everything I've done here is in capital letters. I'm not trying to yell at you. I know if we were texting, you might be mad at me. But relationships happen in small numbers, and lives are changed by relationships. Isn't that true? Biggest desire of people is to be seen and loved. Small church, hard to blend in. You can't be anonymous. I can see the first-time visitors out of the corner of my eye, wherever they sit. Welcome again. We've said that before. Every time a first-time visitor walks into a small church, they might as well be wearing their fluorescent orange hunting jacket. Because, and that's why I say a lot of the people that attend here are the type that Gideon wanted in his army, the 300, the kind that God chose, the kind that kneel and lap and keep a watch. You have to be pretty brave to walk into a small church because of that very reason. You stand out. But thank you for coming and being my example today. I wasn't sure what I was going to do if we didn't have any first-time visitors, but but it's hard to blend in. You can't be anonymous, and you can't hide. There are some examples of things that we get into through the course of the year. Decorating for Christmas. Ladies, after the Soul Sisters monthly breakfast, and a group of us helping Beatrice into the pool to become baptized. I didn't count the number. I think it was like 7 people in that picture, maybe 8, to help Beatrice down into the pool. But again, in a large church, you might not get these kind of opportunities. Relational greatness happens in small numbers. This is the reason why a lot of large churches will break up into smaller, like dinner groups and Bible studies and things like that. This picture here, although not very flattering, I take these, or I have these pictures taken and I throw them up on a PowerPoint and I'm like, oh, I got to go on a diet. But look at all the happy faces. You know, we've got Dennis, we've got Kathy, we've got Gail, we've got Helen, we've got Carrie and Peyton back there, and we got Michelle and Debbie and Karen and Jerry and Chris and Zara. This was the last night of an 8-episode kind of apologetics 101, you will, kind of beginner apologetics. And everyone's always enthusiastic at the beginning of a, kind of a Bible study type class. And, you can get 12, you can get 10, but boy, by the time you get to the 8th one, usually you're down. It's like, oh, I don't want to go. And, but no, credit to everybody in attendance. It was a nice class, and we're going to do it again in October, right? So, reason number 3. Small churches are intergenerational playgrounds. I grabbed a picture here that showed, I think that's Karen on the far left. Is that you, Karen? Yep, I think that's Karen. There's Cody up there with his back to us, surrounded by a bunch of younger children. That's the sign of a healthy church. Easier to have a mixed generational group in a medium or large church. But you get to a small church, and that's the problem you see in America. You get to small churches, there's a lot of gray hair and a lot of older people. Really nice to see a healthy church when we've got some people without gray hair. And of course, we've got kids upstairs, in their class this morning. So it's ideal for living, loving, and learning about God and each other. Whoops, I just had the right picture. Come on, I got to go back one. Yeah. I'm a PC person, I'm not an Apple person. So these iPads, they don't work well with me. Here's a picture of our 2024 church picnic, and mixing the old and the young. And again, that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about as we gather in groups, and we try not to be too cliquish, but just getting a chance to talk with other people from different generations. Another example of that is the River Mountain Church Golf Fellowship group. And no, that is not a typo when it says younger teaching the older, because we have a young man there. This is where I was going to use the laser pointer, but I guess it's pretty obvious. We have a young man there that I don't know what his future is, but God's got a plan for that boy, whether it's golf or whatever. He's just talented. I mean, we went out Friday night and golfed. A talented young man. He doesn't get flustered. We try. But it just, the older men stand around and say, I wish I was that flexible. I wish my golf swing were that smooth, all those kind of things. But whether it's older teaching the younger or younger teaching the older, it's just nice to have a church community where we've got anywhere from infants and toddlers all the way up to 80s and 90s. Anybody here in the 90s? I don't think so. We're in the 80s, I believe. Reason number 4, small churches have space for everyone to learn, serve, and lead. Great leadership training ground. Not sure in a mega church where I'd ever get close to the pulpit. Usually mega churches have multiple levels of pastors on staff, and then they will bring in famous guest speakers. And for an elder like myself to make it to the pulpit, in a mega church, that'd be pretty tough. But so we enjoy this, and the gift of small churches is amazing. Mentoring, discipleships, being seen, being loved, doing life together, an extended family, growing in leadership, being a part of the community, being missed when you are gone, and each person is needed. Of late, the world has put pressure on small churches and the pastors of small churches to grow. Why is that? That's the modern understanding of what a successful ministry looks like. You've got to be growing. It's all about numbers. And numbers mean money, right? It's all about numbers and money and growing and more facilities. But that's not true. It's not biblical. Remember how Saul wanted David to wear his armor? That's kind of like a small church trying to act like a big church. It just didn't fit. It just wasn't right. And David went out in just his normal shepherd clothes, slayed the giant, and who got the glory? God. Same with Gideon. He defeats the Midianites, as numerous as grains of sand on the seashore, with 300 people. And who gets the glory? God. What I see when I look out at this congregation today, I see an assembly of people with varied occupations and talents. I see accountants. I see authors. I see musicians. I see general contractors, school teachers, township supervisors, small business owners, parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, infants, toddlers, school students, young adults, college students, mechanics, retirees, entrepreneurs, realtors, artists, farmers, coal miners, equipment operators, financial planners, mothers, husbands, county employees, state employees, volunteers, athletes, and an air traffic controller who's not here today. But that's what I see. What does the church see? The church sees pastors, elders, deacons, Sunday school teachers, worship leaders, Members, greeters, prayer warriors, faithful and cheerful givers, believers and non-believers. What does God see? God sees laborers for the kingdom, or if you will, workers for the harvest. So in summary, God loves small because small numbers putting their faith in Him will accomplish great things. Importance of relationships, not just two-dimensional relationship, but three-dimensional relationships. And what do I mean by that? Two-dimensional is, hi, my name's Bob. Hi, how are you? Thanks, good. 5 minutes later, you forgot the name. Three-dimensional is, you know Bob, you remember his name, you know what he does for a living, you know what his wife's name is, you know how many kids he has, you know if he's retired, you know what his hobbies are. That's three-dimensional. That's what we do in a small church. Intergenerational playground, doing life in mixed age groups, younger learning from older, sometimes the opposite. But we also saw that when we homeschooled our kids. Our 9th grade boys teaching the 1st grade boys how to play soccer. When you go to public school, you're on a bus and everybody around you is in your grade, and you spend your whole day going through all your classes with all your 10th grade buddies, and those are your friends. But when you do things intergenerationally, you learn as a senior in high school how to interact with toddlers and 1st graders and things like that, and vice versa. You know, you remember when you were in 1st grade how much you looked up to the 12th graders, or when you were in 6th grade, you know, so on and so forth. But intergenerational learning is something that I think the United States needs to get back to. Learning from the old, younger helping the older, kids helping grandparents, grandparents teaching their grandchildren how to cook, how to do things, how to hunt, how to fish. Space for everyone to participate. When the pastor calls for 10 volunteers in a church of 1,000, 990 can hide. When pastor calls for 10 volunteers in a church of 100, it's harder to hide. And so again, if you are of the mentality to be at and support a small church, you're kind of one of those frontline Christians. I'm here. God, you know, I'm willing, I'm able. Show me what you want me to do. And it won't be long. You'll be plugged in. So again, how do we define a church? A community living in union with Jesus Christ and with each other. All those other things, A, B, and C, the building, the events, the organization, they'll fall in place. One of the other things I came across after I had printed this out, and I honestly really am getting closer to the end here. Characteristics of an effective small church. And I'm just going to read through these, and I think some of them applies to this church. Number 1, we prioritize worship. Number 2, we commit to missions. This church supports 8 missions. Number 3, strengthen your pastor's leadership. Number 4, thrive, don't just survive. Number 5, family feel. I think we got that one. Nurture a passionate faith. We've got that one. Deploy resources wisely. We got that one. Don't overspend. Less staff. We definitely have that one. We definitely have that one. So let's not become this. Let you soak on that for a second. Got the guy in the front row that's not there. Says, no one here talks to me. That's not the case in this church. We got someone on the bottom that says, they're not in church because they're sitting in the coffee shop reading the paper. Someone else says the children won't keep quiet and everybody stares at me. No one up here. The kids are playing football. I understand, we understand, there are times. You've got kids in programs, sometimes they fall on Sundays. It happens. There's no one else here my age. I overslept. I don't think we want to become this church either. A little bit maybe too legalistic. Men over here, kids over there. I think we need to remember this is the kind of church we want to become or continue to be. Remember that it's all about Him. You know, it's all about Him. Small, medium, or large, it doesn't matter. It's all about Him. So this morning as I finish up, what I'd like you to do, look left, look right, look behind you. If there's someone here or several people here that you have never met before, and be careful over here. You know, even people that attend regularly, you people on this side don't tend to associate with the people over here. And so spend a few moments after the service here, just seek out somebody that you've seen the face, you recognize the face, but you've never met them, you never shook their hands, and make an effort to do that. If you need prayer, the pulpit will be open. My wife and I will be up here. The pastor's here today, as he is almost every day. So that's all I've got. Thank you. You're dismissed.
Thanks for listening to this message from River Mountain Church. If you'd like some more information, visit our website, rivermountainchurch.org.